what I'm dealing with here is a whole new situation. And this gentleman here, Gerald Celente, has verbalized a bit of it in that video, which I think is excellent, because he's talking about the collapse of the commercial market in America, and we're also seeing the same thing in this country here, because shops are becoming available and whole centers are losing a whole portion of the shops. The centers need the money, they can't get the money in, and so your commercial market starts to sink as well. So not only is your subprime gone, your prime market has been sinking, and your commercial market is now on the edge of disaster. This is going on in America, and it's going to happen in this country here. There's nothing you, I, or anybody else need to be able to do about it. The government has spent all the money on some wild spending spree, and now, of course, we're into a very serious situation. And you know, when you look at this one here, you can see, you say, oh, there's a property boom, and it's all starting to take off. Now, what do you see? That's the dollar. That's the dollar, where the dollars come from and how far it's collapsed. And you know, it's down hugely on where it should be, and that is because the American government has caused a loss of faith in the dollar, because they've overloaned, they've printed too much money, and the markets cannot believe that that's a very good idea. We've got men like McIlvaney who put these sort of reports out, and they come every month, and you get them. You can see what they're talking about there. You can read that. You see global depression, financial meltdown, and then this is another report, understanding the credit meltdown, etc. You know, this is another big report. And here we've got another one. Are we yet in hyperinflation report? In other words, are we going to enter hyperinflation? This particular book here, written by William Rees-Mogg, lays down all the scenario, and this book was written in 1993. I bought it on an air trip between South Africa and America, and when I was in America I think I bought it there, and I read that as I flew from Newark over to California, and it happened to drop out my bookshelf just the other day in the garage, and it fell up at a page, and I looked at it, and it actually gave you the analysis of the present situation, which they said started in 2000, although it was written in 1993. They recognized the problem was going to start in year 2000, and so it's continued since then. Of course, what we had was inflation, where house prices went up and cars went up and the price of food went up and everything else went up, because that's how things were going. And then the very next stage is what we've hit now, once the credit crunch came along, is deflation. So now the prices have all collapsed and all gone down, and house prices have gone down, the price of cars has gone down, second-hand cars, the market has gone down, everything has gone down, and food prices have gone down. But the very next phase of this is hyperinflation. Now, the government hasn't told anybody about that, but they are starting to mumble about it now. And I see the governor of the Bank of England is talking about it, and they're talking about it, and these men are talking about it as well. All these men, all these reports, and that's what that McIlvaney report is talking about, hyperinflation. Because if you are buying, if you've been learning all this money and raising all this money and borrowing from banks and giving it to banks and having a wonderful time that way, somebody's got to pay that lot back. So every man in this country, I think, is due now for 50,000, plus we're paying all this money to Europe, which 95% is missing, according to the EU auditors. This country can't afford it. We are not the economy of the size of America, yet we've probably loaned to banks more than America has. I mean, that is ridiculous, you know. And with everything in tow, we will have raised loans for 2.4 trillion, and we're just taking another 50 billion, that'd make it 2.45, something like that. It's just absolutely crazy. And that will cause hyperinflation, because as the pound sinks under the weight of this, like you saw the dollar there, I showed you that dollar collapsing there, that's how the dollar looks at the present moment. You can see the chart coming right the way down over here, there it is. All your imports start to go. Of course, if you're paying a pound for a car or a car part, and now the pound drops to 50 cents, now you're going to have to pay £2, because the value of the pound is down at 50 pence, you have to pay £2. And that is the fear. That is the fear. So that will bring hyperinflation into the country, because we're importing a lot of our food, we're importing a lot of our car parts and all the bits and pieces for all these cars we produce, where before we manufactured them internally, just brought steel in at, say, £20 a ton, and then sold the car for £2,000, £3,000, £4,000, £5,000, £10,000. for that car, and all the rest was labor and finish and paint and all that sort of thing, and profit. Now we are paying all these prices for all these parts. Clothing and everything is manufactured all over the planet. We've painted ourselves into a terrible situation. So as the pound starts to decline, the price internally is going to go up, and that's what they call hyperinflation, which will keep on going. And that is why, you know, you've got to look at your electricity bills. You've got to try and get the very best you can. And on your cars, you need things like fuel cells to try and cut down the fuel consumption. You need to find these magnetic motors, which you know, I'm sort of involved in as well. And these things can cut down your electricity requirements because they can produce electricity. But there's a lot of things you've got to be able to look at, because your price of fuel is going to go up, your price of electricity is going to go up, your price of everything is going to go up, and that's called hyperinflation. Please understand, this is not from me. This is from these very erudite, very clever men. And you see the Macclesfield intelligence advisor. And you know, people like this man here, Weiss, warned about this, and he said the problem is we've got the same men in charge. He said because he advises on banks, he created what they call the bank rating agency, this man here. And I've got a lot of respect for him. So does McIlvany have a lot of respect for him. And this man advises governments and banks, and he's got the bank rating agency. So he knows a lot about banks. And he said, you know, all these banks, we've warned them, and they laughed at us and said, no, that's not going to happen. Of course, when it happened, they were caught completely flat-footed. And now he says, you've got the same people in charge telling us that it's all over and we've got the answers. And he said, it hasn't all gone away. All these bank balance sheets, as we've seen recently with Lloyd's and these other banks, which the government is giving money to. It's the same things in America. All this bad debt is still there. So how on earth are we going to sort it out? You must remember, these banks are richer than countries, and even the big American banks are far bigger than the GDP of America. America's GDP was 13.5 trillion. Some of these banks got 100 trillion on their books. That's just one thing. That's in derivatives. That's Goldman Sachs. Huge, absolutely massive bank. I mean, the size of the derivatives market, which he's worried about here, is 1,000 trillion. Well, short of that. But it's very close to that. It says 800 to 900 trillion. Now this is a market that's also in trouble, besides the insurance market, the banking market and everything else. And now we've shifted the whole thing onto the government. Can the government, has the government now become a risk like the banks and everything else has become? Is this the same with the British government? Have we painted ourselves into a terrible situation which we can't get out of? We in actual fact have got to pray that this is not going to actually happen. But you know, the Bible talks about a time when people are throwing money away, because it's worthless. It's absolutely worthless. And this Bible is an end-time book. It is not remember, a lot of the time when that Bible was written, no people could read it because it wasn't available to most of the people. It's only now it's available. It's an end-time book. Daniel says an end-time book, Revelation, and all those tied with all the rest of the books of the Bible. So we, in actual fact, are facing up to a very difficult situation in the short term, and probably hyperinflation. Thank you very much for listening, and please visit that site up there, because you know, you might be able to, we'll have a lot more information on there as the days go on now. Thank you very much.